Hi everyone, thanks for attending. So my name is Ian and I'm an engineer. I work for Lockheed Martin Energy. And today I'm presenting the results of a research study we did where we interviewed industry experts about variable refrigerant flow systems for commercial buildings. So I'd like to start with a little bit about the different contributors to this project. So I work for a group within Lockheed Martin that is dedicated to energy. And we offer kind of a full spectrum of technology, software, management expertise for utility solutions. Some of our key offerings include demand-side management, microgrid and distributed energy resources, information and operations technology, and then operational services, which may include performance contracting. So this project was funded by Bonneville Power Administration. And BPA is a federal nonprofit. They're part of the U.S. Department of Energy, and they're also a wholesale electricity provider for a lot of states in the Northwest. BPA also guides the implementation of energy efficiency programs. And as part of those energy efficiency programs, Lockheed Martin Energy manages a commercial HVAC trade ally network. This network is called Air Northwest, and the participants are called Air Allies. So Lockheed Martin Energy provides a lot of services for this network. We provide trainings, workshops, technical assistance, tools, incentive information, and other resources. But for this project, we were able to leverage the expertise of this trade ally network. We surveyed them to gain knowledge and insights about variable refrigerant flow systems in commercial buildings. So, show of hands, how many people are familiar with VRF systems? So, a lot of people, just about everybody. For those of you who didn't raise your hand, I bet you're familiar with the components that make up a VRF system. So like normal heat pump components, variable speed drive, heat exchanger, controls, control valves, fan coils. It's all pretty mature technology. So the point I want to make is that you'll find VRF on a lot of emerging technology lists, but I don't necessarily consider it an emerging technology. I think it's a technology that is made up of mature components that's in a configuration that is underutilized. So I think it's also a good example of what engineers do best, right? We take components from different things, we put it together to make new and improved systems. And there's a lot of benefits to VRF, right? Energy savings, improved comfort from faster response times. It can simultaneously heat and cool. It's great for multiple zones and varying loads. So the purpose of this survey is we identified that it was an underutilized technology. So we wanted to survey industry professionals, industry experts, and find out what exactly are the key drivers and the key barriers to implementation for VRF systems. So I'll give a brief overview of our methodology for the survey. It's pretty simple. We did the survey in two parts. First was an online component. It was a brief survey. It was only 8 questions. We asked about general sales trends, market barriers, recommended building types, energy savings, non-energy benefits, and costs. Then, based on the results of our online survey, we selected 8 key market actors to follow up with 20 to 25-minute phone interviews where we could dig deeper into some of their responses. And we dug deeper into barriers and potential solutions for those barriers, energy savings methodology, and specifically what kind of tools they were using to estimate energy savings. We wanted to dig deeper into costs and kind of find a breakdown of cost between labor and equipment. And then we talked specifically about good applications for installations of VRF systems. Okay, so here are some of the results. We sent the survey out to 100 of our trade allies, and we got responses from 21. Now this was unincentivized survey, so we were pretty happy with a 21% response rate, right? There's no incentive for them to fill this out. But if you're looking for statistical significance, this is a low number, and I don't think there's enough people out there where we could get a statistically significant sample size. So we had to make do with 21. We did make sure to include a diverse group of engineers, contractors, distributors, and manufacturer representatives. So here are some of the results. The first question we asked was, what percent of your sales come from VRF systems? And the overwhelming majority said 0 to 10%. And then it trails off as the percentages get higher. So this is kind of intuitive, the low percentage and then gradually trailing off. But there's this handful of people who do greater than 50% as well. The next question was, in your opinion, what is the greatest barrier to VRF adoption? So the most people identified higher cost, followed by lack of customer awareness. But there was an interesting kind of interaction between these two questions. We found that the people who selected 0 to 10% of their sales also said higher cost was the great barrier, whereas the people who said higher percentages of their sales came from VRFs, they were more likely to say lack of customer awareness. So it kind of speaks to the economies of scale. As you have a greater percentage of your sales coming from VRFs, that cost barrier just naturally kind of fades away, and the next barrier is lack of customer awareness. So we asked them specifically how much, on average, energy savings do you get out of VRF technologies? And I don't have the chart up here because it was a boring graph. Everybody said 20 to 30% savings. There's good consistency. So that was great. That was very encouraging. Everybody is on the same page. They all say, on average, 20 to 30%. And then we asked, what method do you use for estimating energy savings? And again, they were pretty consistent. They all said some kind of energy model, a manufacturer energy model, or some other kind of energy model. Very few said measuring, rule of thumb, or other. So the next question we asked was, what non-energy benefit is the most influential to customers? And the majority of respondents said increased comfort, and that was followed by better control, quieter operation, lower maintenance, and then environmental stewardship. So then we asked questions about the market. We asked, what is the typical building type where VRF systems are recommended? And there's a good spread here between office, healthcare, school, and lodging. So it applies to lots of different building types, which is great. There's a big market for it. When we asked about what type of retrofit is recommended, the majority of people said end of life, and then followed by new construction, and then the least amount of respondents said an early replacement to an existing system. So this last slide shows the respondents' answers when we asked about cost. And we asked specifically, what is the estimated additional cost per ton? So that's the incremental cost on a per ton basis for a VRF system relative to other HVAC systems. And the majority of respondents said $500 to $1,000 per ton. But if you look at the responses, it's very scattered. There's no trend. It's not focused on a certain cost range. And we also have the most non-responses for this question. So our conclusion was that there's generally confusion about what these systems cost amongst our respondents. So that was a little bit concerning. So that concludes the results from the online survey part of it. Then we selected our 8 key respondents and followed up with those phone interviews. And again, we made sure to include a good group of engineers, contractors, distributors, and manufacturer representatives. The phone interviews focused on project examples, and we talked about the energy modeling tools they used. So a lot of them used manufacturer models that are specific to products that that manufacturer makes. Others used another kind of energy model, and most of those were kind of in-house developed spreadsheet tools. And we looked at a couple of those. Some of them we found were just single zone kind of approaches to modeling energy, which isn't a great approach for this type of system because there's a lot of benefits from the multi-zone capability. So there's not a lot of QA with the in-house developed tools. Manufacturers are specific to their own products. Very few people know how to run Energy Plus. So there's kind of this gap with the tools available. There are tools available, but they all have pros and cons. Then we talked about the greatest barriers, and we talked about solutions to those barriers. So we wanted feedback on what could we do to help push the market forward. And I'll talk about those solutions in a couple slides. We did dig deeper into the cost confusion. We wanted to gain clarity. We wanted to get a breakdown of where the increased cost was coming from. Is it labor? Is it equipment? And what we found was more confusion. So about half the people said the increased cost came from labor, and the other half said the increased cost came from equipment. So we didn't gain any clarity. We actually got more confusion about costs. So some of our key takeaways. The energy savings is very consistent and well known, 20 to 30% on average. Everybody seems to think that. And they do it in different ways, they have different tools, but that is kind of one thing that they can all agree on. When we dug into the barriers, cost was a barrier, but we found that kind of it naturally faded away as sales increased. So the next biggest barrier, customer awareness, kind of might be the key moving forward. And then talked about the tools, and then the confusion and cost kind of that got compounded with our phone interviews. So some of the future work identified when we talked about what solutions there are to the barriers, a lot of the respondents requested trainings or customer awareness campaigns. A couple of them asked for online calculators or tools, something they could use that was general and applied to all types of systems. And then we felt that since there was so much confusion about cost, a good next step would be to develop some kind of resources to help the industry experts develop cost estimates for these types of systems, so there's less confusion. And that is the conclusion of the survey results. I hope you found this useful, and I know that was quick, so I'll answer any questions